Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Discussing a Murderer. This is Jeff Jones, and with me is the partial panel today with Kelly, Dr. Silkman, and Jack. So we'll go from the top and say good morning, Kel.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back. It's a shame Big Jeff couldn't make it here today, but we're hoping to see him next episode.
Absolutely. Big Jeff should be back, and we're working on maybe possibly slipping in a little video. We might have a little special something coming up for the premiere. But with that said, Dr. Silkman, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, panel, and good morning, everyone in chat. It's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Can't wait.
Thank you, Dr. Silkman. And Jack, how you doing? You're back with your power and your Wi-Fi, and everything is good to go?
I am. Power got restored in net within an hour yesterday afternoon, so I was shocked. Power wasn't supposed to be back until the 1st, but hey, I'll take it. So hoping, no one. As far as I know, that there's no injuries, but we got a lot of high winds in our area. So anyway, hello panel, Dr. Silkman and Cal and everyone in the live chat. Looking forward to it. Let's do it.
Absolutely, thank you. And then in the background, you guys have to think about who's going to do the wrap-up comments. With that said, let us begin in Chicago, Illinois.
So much of post-conviction work is emotional at this point. You know, you come on board a case at the lowest point for a person. They've just been convicted. They're in that hole. It's a black moment for them. This stuff takes years. It can take decades. The fights are so long, and they can get ugly, and they can be painful. So, you have faith, you believe in your clients. The truth is a really hard thing to cover up for too long, especially in a case like this where it's just sitting there. The truth is just sitting there on the interrogation tape. All you have to do is persuade someone to take that close and careful look at it.
The deeper we get into this system, the more losses that we accrue, the harder it is to win. We lost in the state trial court in front of Judge Fox. We lost in the appellate court. We hoped the Wisconsin Supreme Court would take the case. The judge who's now looking at the case has to overturn the decisions of more other judges.
When a petitioner like Brendan Dassey files a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, he's asking a federal court to review the way the state court applied the U.S. Constitution to his case. What's important to understand about the federal court system, which is where Brendan's case is now, is that there is no federal right not to be in prison if you're innocent, which is incredible, but true. Somebody like Brendan can't walk into federal court and simply say, here's evidence that I'm innocent. Here's evidence that I didn't do this crime. You can't even walk in and say, here's who did do this crime. Instead, we have to show the federal court that the Constitution was violated during Brendan's prosecution. That's how we get a new trial.
It just goes to show that, and I think everyone on the panel will agree, that once you've been convicted of a crime, even though you are innocent of that crime, there's a huge, long, drawn-out process that a person must go through in order to prove their innocence, right? And as Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizens pointed out, you can say you're innocent, you didn't do it, you can actually point to a third party that you believed was involved, but you have to go through this process, right? and it's very, very hard to overturn a conviction. So it's a long road, and it's an arduous one. But not only that, it's a very expensive one too.
Just to add in, listening to Drizzen and Night Rider talk there, and this is a side note, and I'll get to my main point. Did you all hear the underlying war drums in the background begin to play? Such a great effect, because that's exactly what they were against. This was war drums. This was war with the circuit court, the appellate court, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and they're all saying, "Screw you! We screwed this kid over. We passed him around for more screwing, and now we're going to go to the Seventh Circuit." He gets away. He gets cleared. Nope. Schimmel's like, "Nope. We got to go to the en banc. We got more stuff." They get another bite at the apple. I always have a real problem with that. But my other point is the passion. You can hear it in Laura Nyrider's voice. You can see it in her face. She so believes in his innocence. I think it hurt her when she did the oral arguments, because she's so emotionally wrapped up in the case. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, they're very, very good points, Jack 61. And, you have to believe in your client, in your client's innocence. But as you said about the war drums, yeah, it's a long path. It's a long path to prove your innocence. And in any way, you're going to be locked in prison, even though you believe that, even if you are innocent, you're going to be doing jail time. And, we've heard of many, many cases where individuals have been sitting in prison for 5, 10, 15 years, only to prove their innocence, and then they were exonerated. So it is a very long, drawn-out process. Tragic, actually.
Yeah, I think, Doc, the average that I heard Zellner say is 15 years once somebody gets convicted to undo the damage, get them out.
Correct. Yep. Long lead time.
We've asked the federal court to focus on two things in particular. The first claim that we're making is that Brendan's interrogation and the confession was involuntary. That is, it was taken in violation of Brendan's Fifth Amendment rights because he was coerced into confessing to the murder and rape of Teresa Halbach by police. The second claim that we're making in federal court is that Brendan's Sixth Amendment right to counsel was violated by the actions of Len Kaczynski. That his actions so violated the sacred duties that an attorney owes his client, essentially that it was like Brendan Dassey had no lawyer at all.
Hello, Ben. Here we are for you.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Good. All set. Yep.
What are your thoughts after today?
Well, we're disappointed in. Start over. We're disappointed in Judge Fox's ruling. I guess we'll take a case the way the facts come in, and Brendan and I will be discussing the various options we've got in this case sometime next week.
As a defense attorney, how many confession cases have you won that have gone to trial?
Actually, I have won a few, although never with a videotaped confession. Just.
I wanted to point out, because the lying begins immediately. The son of a bitch. Sorry, I'm going to break my new iPad, Doc. This son of a bitch, he says, "Well, yeah, I'll be discussing this different things with Brendan next week." Well, that wasn't the plan at all. Him and O'Kelly had already made the plan for today. Brendan's going to be at his low point. I need to be the one he sees as relief. Talking about O'Kelly, how anyone could see that guy as having any kind of relief. He knew, because he was going to torture him. He's going to get him in that room and torture him and abuse him. And that's exactly what he did. This shit was planned. It was done with intent. And I'm going to let you represent as being the lawyer, for today. And when you get this set up with Kratz and Fassbender and Uyghur to have this interview on Saturday, May the 13th, it's okay. You can represent us. No, Ken or Lynn, you are the lawyer, dude. You can't do that. Anyway, I wanted to point that out. It was a big lie. One of many.
100% correct. The amount of damage that Len Kaczynski and Mike O'Kelly did to Brendan Dassey in his case is phenomenal. You know, we mustn't forget that. And Jack 61 is 100% correct. After that judge's ruling, Brendan was really at his lowest point. And so hence you now know that the actions of Len Kaczynski and Michael O'Kelly, the way they were acting on Brendan, especially to take a plea deal, it's a shocking, shocking strategy. And, you know, you would expect to have an attorney that actually works for you, not against you. And furthermore, as Jack 61 pointed out, Kaczynski and O'Kelly were really working for the state. And that's incredible when you think about it.
The judge ruled it's admissible, it would be very strong evidence that I'm sure a jury would find quite believable, because it's right there on tape, the whole thing. And it's clear that it wasn't the result of any intimidation type of tactics by law enforcement.
We filed our petition for a writ of habeas corpus in front of a magistrate judge. He's the man who will review the way that the state court handled Brendan's case.
Right there's your hero, a man that stood up.
We could have a decision.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Judge Duppin stood up to all of Wisconsin and said, look, you guys screwed this kid. Let him out. Took a lot of guts.
Oh, not only that, he also copped a lot of criticism as well. And as you know, Jack, we extensively went through Ken Kratz's book, and Mr. Kratz was not impressed with Judge Duffin at all.
No, he wasn't.
No, and it takes a lot of guts, takes a lot of balls to do what Judge Duffin actually did. I mean, for all of us who've gone through Brendan Dassey's so-called confessions, all of us can see that the poor kid was coerced. And why did it take a magistrate judge to spell out the obvious that we all saw, but nobody else did, especially Fassbender and Uyghur? It truly is unforgivable when you think about it.
Tomorrow, or we could have a decision a year from now.
Dean Strang actually made an appearance at the Minnesota State Capitol today. Later tonight, he's going to be speaking to a sold-out audience in Minneapolis.
The value to me of the documentary or of any book about the case ought to be asking bigger questions.
The things that seem to outrage people and the questions that we've gotten are things that Dean and I have talked about for years, but most people haven't been interested in hearing about them until now.
When we don't have confidence in the workings of the system, I think we have an obligation to try to work towards a system that makes fewer mistakes.
Yeah. How do you do that?
You talk about it.
This goes to show the power of Making a Murderer, the series, the docuseries, right? And you can hear Strang and Butin talking about the fact that, you know, the system is not perfect, and they have been discussing it for years, and no one's hearing. Yet when Making a Murderer came out, it caused a bombshell, right? Because now a lot of people were exposed to the perceived injustices in both the Stephen and Brendan Dassey cases, right? And it's a real tragedy in a way that it took something like a docuseries for people to stand up and take note, because as Jack and Kelly will attest, this is not unique to Brendan and Stephen. This type of injustices have been occurring for many, many years. And you could imagine how many prisoners have been sitting in prison for 30, 40 years, only later to be exonerated and released, right? Even though that's fantastic, their life is gone. Their family members have gone. You know, it's just a shocking, terrible tragedy that it took a docuseries for people to take note.
Yeah, for us in the U.S., it was to me a huge catalyst to start the conversation, a real conversation. That rolled on from late 2015 up and through the next several years actually, and then we had all many other events occurred, but at the bottom end of it is wanting reform, correct reforms within the system that where this kind of thing can't happen. You can't get a Brendan and just lock him up because he's he makes certain statements that get believed as truth when in fact the chances are they likely knew that it wasn't true, but they used it anyway to get a conviction. And that shouldn't ever be, in my opinion, what our system is about. It should be about the truth, all of it.
Correct. And, it's remarkable that Len said, well, we've got a videotape confession, you can't beat that. Hasn't he actually heard of false confessions? And even Tom Fallon, exactly the same. Guilty people don't falsely confess. And we know, of course, that's not true. And even if it's videotaped, how many examples can we give of people being videotaped giving a false confession because they've been coerced by investigators that keep on hammering them for 12 to 14 hours straight? So people do falsely confess even when they're videotaped. So it's really a poor excuse by Len Kaczynski.
The legal defense team featured in the Netflix series Making a Murderer is going on tour across the country.
We were talking at one point and we said, wouldn't it be good if we could have some kind of a forum where we could actually let people engage in a real conversation about this? And so the idea of a speaking tour came up.
A conversation on Making a Murderer with attorneys Dean Strang and Jared Budig.
A conversation on Making a Murderer is booking theaters across the country.
It's a chance to reach hundreds or even thousands of people on a given evening and to speak unedited at some length about how justice is administered, especially to those who don't have many advantages.
As good as America's system of justice is on paper, in practice, it falls very short of the ideals that it's based on. And it doesn't have to be that way. If people really take ownership of it, they can make a difference.
How confident are you that Avery will ever be a free man again?
We're not directly involved in representing him at this point, but I remain optimistic.
I like that. I like the way he answered that question, that he remains optimistic. He's not here to comment on the case, but I think it's one of the things that have always kept a lot of us going back to this well, and that is the fact that all of Stephen's lawyers, past and present, all think he's innocent.
Correct. And someone like Kathleen Zellner, in my opinion, is not going to take someone on if they believe that they're guilty. Because if you remember from, I'm not sure whether we've actually covered it yet, Kathleen Zellner represented that serial killer. I think it was the German guy, the serial killer. And she had the power to potentially get him off due to a technicality in one of the cases. And she knew that this guy was a serial killer, and eventually convinced that guy to come clean of all the people that he had murdered. And Kathleen Zellner said, I'm never going to take on a case which I believe that the person is guilty, right? That's not how she works. So she believes in Stephen Avery's absolute innocence. and has worked very, very hard for many years to try and get in front of a judge.
When Stephen found out that the Supreme Court had denied his case, that they wouldn't even look at it, he was totally devastated. I've never seen him so down. He lost his lawyers, he lost everything. This was 2011. He had been there all that time. That's when the law library stuff started, where he was going to get himself out. He said, I had to do it the first time and I'll do it again. He was on his own, doing everything by himself. And I knew he needed a lawyer to help him. I started a very extensive search for a lawyer that would take a post-conviction case. I didn't even say the name in the beginning because nobody wanted that case. Most of them thought he was guilty. I don't think there was anybody that didn't.
I wrote to a lot of lawyers in that time period. Some I got a response and some I didn't. And some I just got the letter back. They don't even want to open it.
He was in a pretty dark place. I know he said many times, no one's ever going to know the truth. They're always going to believe what they think I did.
But this is what happened to Stephen in the 1985 case, right, in which he was accused of very violent sexual assault on Penny Bernstein. And when he was finally exonerated, right, instead of the MTSO rejoicing and saying, okay, look, we made a mistake, we're very, very sorry, you had individuals like Peterson and Jean Couchet, right, Jack, who were saying, no, I don't believe he's innocent. He may still be guilty. And it goes to show the dilemma. Right. It goes to show the dilemma that Steve faces. If he gets exonerated again, there'll be individuals, especially in law enforcement, who will still say that he's guilty. So he's in a very unenviable position that no matter what he does, right, if he gets exonerated again, there'll be a lot of people in society, and especially in law enforcement, who would argue that he's still guilty and he got off on a technicality. So the poor guy is in a no-win situation.
I love the words of Jean Couchet. So if there's any children out there, please put your earmuffs on. But he said, was DNA planted before? Yes. Is it planted in this case? I don't know.
Correct. And we all know what happened to Jean Couchet, right? They found him dead with a Bible in his hand, right? And that comment there, if you think about it, and I'm sure Jack will comment on it, that comment there would have sent chills down the spine of someone like Kaseric, right? Because if, you know, we've been arguing for years now that in order to get this whole planting scenario off the ground, you need an insider in the crime lab. And for Jean Couchet to openly admit that DNA evidence can be manipulated like that, that's pretty devastating. What do you think? What do you think, Jack?
It is, and you guys remember, and we don't have a lot of it, but there's like a 3-minute clip that John Schrack got when he worked for USA Today, and seeing Couchet's mannerisms, how he was on camera, the eye rolls, and how he talked about DNA. To me, it just impacted what he was telling more so than just the words. His facial expressions were really key.
On Dayline, innocent people in prison. It looked good, so I watched it. That's when I seen Kathleen. And I told Sally to watch it.
I watched it and I said right out loud in my living room, that's the person that's going to get Stephen out.
I never heard of a lawyer. He's got so many people out that convinced me to get her paperwork on her law firm.
This is one that takes him pro bono. This is what she does. And I was so excited. And that's when he told me, get her. That I remember the words, get her. And that's when I wrote the first letter, which was in January of 2012. I don't think I stopped after that.
I wrote her. Then Sandy wrote her. With a good lawyer like that, it takes a while because you're always busy.
I remember sending her emails saying, I just wonder if you could just answer me. If you could just tell me yes or no.
She won the case, what she had on the TV. She got it overturned. I always had a good feeling about her. And I never got off of that.
You know how hard it was to get Ryan Ferguson exonerated? That was a massive, massive uphill battle to get him released. And what she did was phenomenal. And there are a lot of parallels, in my opinion, especially to Brendan Dassey, and she got Ryan Ferguson free. And the poor kid had nothing to do with any crime, and yet he was in prison for a very long period of time. It was remarkable what Zellner did.
Yeah, I was actually going to just say exactly what Silkman said and say to people that if you guys haven't watched Daydream Killer, I highly suggest it because of the parallels between Stephen Avery's case and Ryan Ferguson's. You have obviously a guy who confesses to a crime based on a dream that he had. So it's really interesting, and it's just the power of fighting and watching Ryan Ferguson's dad go through the journey. It's just really interesting to see how hard you have to fight. And then the other thing is Kathleen, actually, I don't want to say too much for the people that haven't seen it, but the reason why I really suggest it is because it shows Kathleen go into an evidentiary hearing is what she's essentially trying to go for right now. And she's not successful in the evidentiary hearing. And it kind of shows you throughout, and then it takes you on another journey of how hard the courts are in terms of locking down a conviction. So again, everyone out there, if you haven't seen it, it's a really good baseline to see Kathleen's work. So jump on board and give it a go.
Yeah, just a couple of comments to add to Cal and Dr. Silkman. That's just a slight correction, Cal. That's Dream Killer. And it used to be on... it was on Amazon Prime, but I think it's actually on Netflix right now. It's a great documentary, and what his dad did is just insane. But this confession by his buddy was long after the crime, and what's even worse is that they had blood evidence with fingerprints that wasn't tied to either one of the guys. And
correct.
It is just a terrible, terrible, terrible case.
Correct. And yeah, sorry, Jack.
That's okay. Just one last comment, and is that with Kathleen, and I listened to Sandy Greenman talk. It was a huge thing for her to take this case, and for a lot of reasons. We think about somebody being innocent, from what our perspective is, in all of our research. That's one thing, but for a lawyer to take this on, no matter how we look at it from a legal standpoint, this is a reputation and a liability. No matter how we look at it, this is her livelihood. This is her life. And then to take it, take a look at it and then do all this stuff pro bono. I'm guessing at this point, she's probably in the neighborhood out of pocket. I'm guessing $800,000 to $900,000. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot. the last point that I'll make, Doc, and then is that she's taken a lot of heat because of some people saying, "Oh, well, she just took it for the publicity." Well, bullshit. That's to me. This is it is free publicity. I get that, but at the same time, again, this liability end of it is a whole nother matter. Plus, she's shelled out of pocket a lot of money for top level experts that Doc can explain far better than I can how good these people are. And we see them on TV, but they actually do the work. I mean, these people are smart. They're really good. They're well respected within the field of forensics and so forth. So I call that a bullshit on that comment. Actually, I just got into a little bit of a racket on Reddit the other day over it because if she had just taken the case, Doc, and guys, Callan and Jeff, if she'd just taken the case and not done anything, okay, maybe. But she shelled out a shit ton of money. Come on, man.
Correct. And, a lot of people have criticized Kathleen for doing it for the publicity. Trust me, she doesn't need the publicity, right? She has won, I think, close to $100 million or so in terms of exonerations and civil lawsuits. And unfortunately, there are thousands and thousands of cases of individuals writing to people like Kathleen Zellner, begging her to represent them, right? So the Innocence Project is inundated with people writing letters. Kathleen Zellner didn't need to take on this case, but she saw the weaknesses. And not only that, remember, she was involved in exonerating Ryan Ferguson. And it's very interesting because the parallel is very, very simple. You have, I think his name was Charles Erickson, who had a dream that both him and Ryan had committed this brutal, brutal murder, right? And so Erickson confessed, and Ryan Ferguson said, "Hey, I was never there," and nor was Erickson. So you have a parallel in which Stephen Avery said, "Hey, I'm innocent. I didn't do a damn thing." And then you have someone like Brendan Dassey, who basically implicated himself. So it is a very, very similar case. It's a very, very hard case to overturn. And Kathleen Zellner put her money where her mouth is and has spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars doing forensic testing.
I just, there's a couple comments that I'd like to make, and that's just the irony, kind of how Stephen Avery says he picked, excuse me, he picked Kathleen Zellner off the TV. Like, it just, like, in this whole media impact that we see on this docuseries and its impact on real life, he tried everything. He tried writing every lawyer he could find, and he ends up picking the one off the TV. And so I just find that to be a funny little hinky kind of folksy moment myself. And I just want to make the point about KZ, and that is that I believe this is the case of her life, and I'm sorry to say it in such harsh terms, but if she loses this one, it's the only one that matters. If she wins it, she's the best ever, undeniably legendary, apex of wrongful convictions. But again, I don't mean to be harsh. If she doesn't push this one over the goalposts into the she'll be remembered as this case, the one she couldn't win. That's just my harsh, strong opinion. Thoughts?
Well, you know what? Like you said, as harsh as it is, that's honestly the reality of it. And I know you've said that to me. You've brought this up to me a few times, and I agree. It really is. And that's the sad truth of it, because people like to always latch onto the negatives in everything in life, and they don't enjoy the good stuff, and they don't want to live through the moments that she's been successful. They latch onto that one negative. And like you said, that one negative is so worldwide that will become the one thing that they speak about. It'll be like, oh, Kathleen, the one that she couldn't win Stephen Avery because he's guilty. And you still see it now. Still from this day, I have read Reddit posts from we call them obviously the guilters, and they say things like, they're at the point where they're like, she's throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks because she knows he's guilty. She worked it out a while ago, especially with the methylation testing, and now she's just trying to fail because she doesn't know how to get out of it, because she doesn't want to walk out in the media with egg on her face that she did take a client that was guilty. This is what we're already getting. This is the feedback we're already hearing from just the rejections to where the Court of Appeal rejected it. The state said that they weren't going to hear the case from her last motion. So agree, Jeff Jones. I think you hit a nail there that people would latch on to this loss.
Yeah, I agree. This is a real big case because she's actually taking on the system, right? The legal system and the mindset and mentality of the system in Wisconsin. So it's just not merely trying to get her client exonerated. She's taking on a system, potential system of corruption. And let me tell you right now, you cross the line, you point a finger at law enforcement, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So her approach, she's actually changed her approach, and I'm sure Jack will discuss a little bit about it with her recent filing that she's put in. She's changed her tack. And on the result of the DNA methylation, you know what? That actually strengthens her case. It actually strengthens her case regarding Bobby Dassey. Whether it is true or not true, it actually makes her case much more stronger. It has eliminated the 1996 blood vial, no question about that. I'm convinced law enforcement weren't involved per se of planting of that blood, but it does potentially point a finger at her target, Bobby Dassey. Whether it happened or not, it strengthens her case. So her approach now is very laser focused. She's done it deliberately.
You know, she
Yeah.
copped a lot. Oh, sorry, Jax. I was just going to
No,
say.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say she did cop a lot of slack for Dream Killer as well. I don't know if you guys remember that, but when that kind of hit Netflix and it became, you know, it got out there and everyone was watching it, and Making a Murderer was already out, I believe, so everyone was doing that comparison and stuff. But she copped a bit of slack from that as well, because like Dr. Silkman gave that little outline of what it's about. You know, a gentleman by the name of Erickson confessed to a crime that he said that he dreamt that him and Ryan was there. In that series, she numerous times in a lot of episodes brings up that neither of the boys were there. There's DNA. It basically eliminates the pair of them, that she's very well aware that Erickson was manipulated and was convinced that this dream was a reality. And she kind of, you know, she admits that she says numerous times, neither of the guys were there that night, neither of them. Yet when it come down to the end of the day, she didn't allow, but she put Erickson on the stand, and he took all the heat, and she allowed him to take all the heat, knowing that neither of the boys were involved, but it helped her client. So when I say she got a lot of slack for that, a lot of guilters especially were echoing the fact that she doesn't give a shit who she throws on under the bus as long as she wins, because she allowed a gentleman to sit on the stand, take all the heat for her client, when in the next breath she was sitting there saying that she knew that this guy also wasn't involved, and he took all the responsibility and said, maybe I was there, but I know Ryan wasn't. So, you know, the reason why I just bring that up is because I'm trying to echo through with everyone's thoughts here, especially going back with Jeff Jones said, people will latch onto these things. And I do push back a little bit what you say, Dr. Silkman, in terms of the strengthening of her case. I do believe it strengthens her case in a laser focus and what strategically she's trying to do. But I think as an overall manner, I don't think it is as strong, because she's eliminated one of the most, talked about theories out there that Dean and Jerry used, and in that way she's given a judge, because that's ultimately who at this stage is the fact finder, a decision, and the decision it becomes, has she proven enough that Bobby Dassey has framed Stephen Avery? Because that's option one now, or option two, and the only option is Ockman Razor, is Stephen Avery bled. So as good as it is in terms of she's like zeroed it in, she's also closed it off as well. She's given the fact finder, which is the judge, only two options now, and those two options are what have to hit the bar level of acceptance. And I don't know if they're going to accept that. So to me, I don't think it's helped her overall in a bigger picture, but I do believe that it helps her purely for the Denny argument, not for the overall picture. I think it's quite scary. And you hear her say, which we will be coming up to in Making a Murderer 2, they ask her what's going to happen if the blood comes back fresh, and she says, we're going to have a bit of a problem. She feared this. She knew how dangerous this methylation was going to be. She knew that if it come back fresh, this is going to be, it's another bar that's been set higher, because now she has to prove that blood was fresh, but yet it wasn't from physically Stephen, it was planted. And we all know one thing we all keep repeating over the years: there is no test to prove planting. So it just makes it harder.
Yep. And that's why she can't just rely on the DNA methylation result. She's pinging a lot of her hope on the observation by Tom Sawinski, right? Because that tidies up her Denny suspect as having a direct connection to the victim's vehicle, right? So, and I also just want to get back quickly, if I may, about what you said, Kelly, regarding the dream killer. She had to take that approach with Erickson, because Erickson kept on saying that, yep, he was there, despite all the forensic evidence proving that neither of the boys were there. So Erickson, unfortunately, did a deal, right? He actually did a deal with the state, which meant that he had to serve a minimum number of years in prison, despite the fact that there was no physical evidence of either of them committing the crime. So that poor guy had no option. Kathleen Zellner had to take that path to say, hey, look, I'm representing my client, Ryan, who's saying that he wasn't there. If you're admitting that you were there, well, that's your dilemma, your issue. She has to take that harsh approach, because otherwise Stephen Avery will never get released, right? So she's got to focus, laser focus on her Denny suspect. That's the way she approached the Ryan Ferguson case. And lucky she did, because you know how hard it was to get Ryan off, despite having key witnesses stating that they perjured themselves and lied in court. The judge didn't even accept that.
Yeah, with this new filing, it does bring into the fact that in prior filings, and we talked about this quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, her approach, instead of taking the entire cow, she's focused in on just one section, and or very few sections, I should say. There are more than one, but it's mainly one, and the goal is clearly to say, hey, look, in 2007, Buting and Strang did not have this other information that we now have. The Sawinski witnesses Bobby, according to him, that he saw Bobby pushing the RAB. That's the connection to the RAB. And then that ergo, however you want to say it, is a connection to Teresa and everything that she had at the time. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. How does this look? How would this have looked to the court, right, and to a jury back at the time. So, yeah, I get what Kel's saying. It does wall off some things, but it opens up another area, which is her goal, is the Denny aspect of it. I mean, for us, we can say we believe that Bobby was involved, he wasn't involved, but it doesn't matter. Her goal is to get a hearing, get a new trial, so she can present everything and really deconstruct the case. There's some aspects of the fresh blood that we've talked about this so many times, but there's two things, probably more on that, but two that popped in my head that really stick out to me, and that's the blood flakes. And I don't know why anyone that's in her car would have blood flakes coming off like that. I don't really understand that. And the second thing is no fingerprints. And to me, that creates another huge dilemma. And I know that's not necessarily part of what she's doing right now, but this is just in my mind thinking, I don't know that the judge will think of that. Maybe she won't. I think that Judge Suckowitz is going to be in a real conundrum. I think she's going to want to deny it no matter what. However it looks, as the reasonable person, Occam's razor and all. At the same time, I think she knows that Zellner has followed exactly what the Court of Appeals told her she had to follow.
Yep, correct.
So she's going to have a really difficult time saying, nope, denied. Because if she denied this on the face of it, depending on what legal whatever that she could come up with, I think the Court of Appeals is going to look very unfavorably on a ruling like that. She's going to have something really strong to deny her this PCR. This is my thoughts, guys.
No, that's a good thought. I just want to add two things while I'm actually thinking about it. It doesn't slip my mind like it does a lot lately, but one thing that I want to address in the community right now that I see a lot of comments being thrown out there in lives, whether it's in Foul Play, whether it's in here, or other channels that we're discussing this case, I'm seeing a lot of comments saying from people saying, Bobby, talk to Kathleen if you've got nothing to hide. I'm sorry, but you guys all need to understand at this stage, it's not Bobby that needs to do it. Kathleen would have shut her door to him. There's no way right now she would want to cooperate with Bobby Dassey herself. And I'll tell you why. If he was to then go into her office and they sat down together and he was able to verify or validate certain things of areas that has concerned her, then there goes her entire Denny motion. You can't use someone who has helped you kind of shut their own door. So right now, it's not Bobby that needs to work with Kathleen. Kathleen does not want to work with Bobby. A lot of people are aware that allegedly Bobby was spoken to her investigator Kirby years ago. I believe it was in like 2007. That opportunity was given then. They walked away from that interview, that investigation, and he was developed a Denny from that. So regardless, I think that people have to understand the strategicness now of Kathleen, and that is the door has ultimately shut for Bobby and Kathleen to work together. If she starts working with him and it hurts her case, it makes no sense to why she would do that. So I just kind of wanted to hit on that one. Secondly, I agree with Jay Jacks. I think that Ange is totally going to try to find any excuse to deny it. But when you read that motion, when you really read that motion, I believe Kathleen is expecting a denial from Ange. She's written that motion for the courts of appeal. You can see it, how she's formatted it, how she's worded it. She constructed it the way that she was asked for courts of appeal to do it. So although I see what Jay Jacks is saying, that Ange is going to find it difficult to do it because by face value, she's kind of locked in. But strategicness, though, in the courts and the power of the courts, she has something she can use to her power, and that is time. All she has to do is waste time. She's not obligated to pick it up. She's not obligated to give an answer or a verdict. She can utilize that power to waste time. In fact, she could do that and ultimately still deny. And then she knows the next step is an appeal. She might know that the courts of appeal will frown upon her, but she don't give a shit, because guess where they kick that? They kick it back to her anyway. But what has she been successful in between that? That's wasting time. The key word's time. And that at this stage is something that Stephen Avery can't afford to lose. The more time that ticks, we don't know, and touch wood when I say this, but there's a lot of things and variables that could happen in between that, and
That's
some
right.
are devastating. That's the reality of it. So ultimately, Ange might think, okay, I am backed in a corner here, but I've got something they don't. And I'm going to say it one more time. That is the word time itself. She just has to waste it.
And then there was the day that I got the email from her. She had watched the documentary and she said that she thought she was the best one for the case. I thought, well, duh, I've been trying to say this for 4 years. 4 years lost, just went away. I couldn't wait to get to the prison. And I remember sitting down with him and I said, I just don't even say anything. Don't even talk to me. I just want to say one thing. Kathleen Zellner wants your case.
I was a happy camper. He's the best lawyer to ever see.
Reaching out from jail, his new attorney, Kathleen Zellner, tweeting this handwritten note after meeting with Avery. To my supporters, I want every forensic test possible done because I am innocent.
I mean, that's a pretty strong posture there from Stephen Avery, actually. I want every possible forensic test done because I am innocent. That's pretty
Right
strong.
there. Yep, you're right. Right there is a massive risk by Stephen, right? And as Kathleen Zellner alludes to later on, she said, you will have to be an idiot to hire me if you're guilty, because she won't hesitate to tell him.
Of doing that stuff. I couldn't do hardly no investigation or have testing done. When I wrote the labs, they tell me that they can't involve because I need an attorney. So that brought my spirits way up. And because she can do all of that, and I couldn't. I knew she had 17 people that she got overturned. I'll be number 18 and she can keep on going.
I told Stephen Avery the same thing I tell everyone. If you hire me and you're guilty, trust me, I'll do a way better job than the prosecutors. I will find out if you are guilty, and we're going to do testing. We can't control the results. The results will be turned over to both sides. So really think about this. You would have to be an idiot to be hiring me to prove that you're guilty.
We begin tonight with the confessions of a serial killer. Tomorrow, the attorney for murderer Larry Eiler will reveal his secrets and his roles in many unsolved murders. Eiler died this weekend in prison from complications of AIDS.
His attorney, Kathleen Zellner, has scheduled a news conference to reveal Eiler's written confessions and details of unsolved killings.
I was really good at gathering new evidence, and I'd uncovered a constitutional violation that was going to reverse the case. And it was the only murder he'd been convicted of. That was disconcerting to me, that I could be, my abilities could be used to potentially free someone who's killed 21 people.
I mean, this is really the crux of Kathleen Zellner's personality. I feel that this is a really important part for the documentary to lay out how she feels about representing innocent and guilty people.
That's right. That's exactly right. She's very upfront, I think, with anyone that approaches her that she's potentially going to take the case. If you're guilty, don't hire me because I'll find it out and I'll turn you over. Basically, you're done.
That was a big ethical dilemma for Kathleen Zellner, right? Because potentially she could have knowingly released a serial killer, right? And so she knew that that was against her thinking, against her ethics, right? So she did the right thing and got Isla to confess.
You know, one area that it actually does strengthen, I think sometimes people look at it and she's this artist that takes apart cases. And as she said, she's like, I discovered a constitutional violation. And I think if you look at it through the prism of other lawyers taking a look at the case, it should have been available for other people to find it too. And, you know, she's very good at what she does, but I'm sure there's other people too. But by pointing these things out, by pointing out that there was a constitutional violation in this guy's trial. Yes, he's a serial killer. He's guilty, but the next people might not be. And we need to make sure that we get this right. And so people who think that she's just beating down and hurting our justice system, it's actually the opposite. It's calling out balls and strikes when things that need to be fixed. Don't violate his constitutional right when you have a very important murder case. Make sure you get it right. And I think that it strengthens our justice system, not weaken.
Eiler was sentenced to death in 1986 for the grisly murder of a Chicago boy. 4 years ago, he offered to confess to other murders in exchange for the death sentence to be commuted to a life sentence with the possibility of parole.
There were murders in 9 jurisdictions, so my plan was to make deals in exchange for the confessions, because this was somebody extremely smart that they had no evidence. They were never going to close the cases. I ended up getting 21 detailed confessions. We did it very piecemeal. I mean, it was just torturous trying to get these confessions from him.
Commute the sentence, and he'd admit to 20 other killings. Only the state's attorney refused to deal. So Eiler told only his lawyer, and she could not speak while he lived.
It was a secret she was forced to keep for 3 long years because of attorney-client privilege.
I talked to Eiler about giving me permission when he died, because he knew he was dying, I knew he was dying, to release the confessions.
They were offered liquor and drugs and money. They were driven to remote areas.
When he was gone, it was a relief, you know. And I was glad to be able to tell these families, you know, give them that information.
Daniel Scott McNeely, Indianapolis, age 21, May 9th, 1983. Those are the murders committed by Larry Eiler alone. Larry Eiler murdered 4 victims with an accomplice.
I really didn't want to do another case like that, and I didn't want to represent anyone that was guilty.
Look who's here for the wrap-up comments.
It's Big Jeff.
I was just about to
Talk about timing.
Big Jeff for the wrap-up comments.
I don't know what the episode is about.
Yeah, we're not throwing you under, we're not throwing you under the bus or anything, man. But yeah, go for
the Rev.
Oh, right. Well, I can get you back up to speed there, Big Jeff. Basically, we covered the episode talking a lot about Zellner and how she got into the case, and just finished up talking about um, the serial killer that she actually represented, and how she had to hold that unfortunate secret for 3 years.
Larry Eiler.
Larry Eiler, and that she had to, and then she revealed it to the families. And in what I think, for my comments, what we saw was Kathleen Zellner struggling to deal with this, and it did weigh on her to represent someone who was guilty of these horrendous crimes.
I just want to say that this has been a great episode so far in terms of how we discovered Kathleen Zellner being called onto the case to represent Stephen Avery. And I think it also demonstrates her high ethic nature, the fact that she had represented a serial killer. And despite that, she knew that potentially she could have let off the serial killer because he never revealed the fact that he had killed 20 other individuals. So I think it goes to show her high ethic behavior. We also discussed a little bit more about the recent filing that Kathleen Zellner has done. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting episode so far.
Yeah, I have to agree with Doc. Seeing how Kathleen said an agreement and talked quite a bit about contacting Kathleen Zellner and trying to get her into Avery's case, and then when she finally accepted it, with the understanding, I'm sure she probably talked at length with Stephen about if you're guilty, don't hire me. You don't want me because I will find it out. And he's like, hey, run every damn test you can think of. I'm innocent. So that's, and as you said earlier, that was a really powerful thing for him to say, because in today's world, that they can find so much, man, with DNA. Real risk. So yeah, it's been a really, really good discussion. We talked some about the new filing, the new PCR that Kathleen filed a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it, and what it really means. What is her true goals, and how will that affect the Wisconsin justice system? So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack. Kel?
Yeah, everything that the gentlemen have said, I don't really want to echo that again, but I just want to say that it's interesting that Stephen put out that powerful statement saying, I want every single forensic evidence tested. I want anything to be done for me, basically, because he's lived through it and he realized the power of forensic evidence, and it only took one pubic hair to set him free. So he has a idea that, hey, maybe there's just one more hair in this case that could set him free again. And the next thing I just kind of want to say before we end it is, we're watching Making Murderer 2, and they address that at that stage, Kathleen had 17 exonerees, which was very successful, one of the most leading lawyers in the world to do that. But she's actually at 20. So since filming this, she's been successful 3 more times. 3 more innocent people have also been set free. So I just think we should capture that moment of for her as well, because that's pretty impressive. I don't want to take that away from her or the other people that have had the blessing of having her strength and her abilities to fight for them. That's about it. It was a good episode, and I guess on to the next one.
Oh, those are some magic words there, Kel. On to the next. And I would just like to make the point about to the fact that, yeah, that's what I would do. I would say, gosh darn it, I'll take any forensic test. Give it to me. If I was innocent, absolutely, that would be my posture. What about you, Big Jeff? Is that what you would do if you're there?
That is absolutely what I would do. And what strikes me about the little bit of the wrap-up comments that I was able to hear is that the statement by Kathleen Zellner, if you're guilty, I'm going to find out, and I'm not going to take anybody who I don't think is innocent. That is something that a person with integrity does. And I find Kathleen Zellner to be an extremely high integrity individual. I mean, we all know the old adage, right? What do you call 50 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean, right? We know what that's called, a good start, right? But I don't think that's the case with Kathleen Zellner. I really think she reeks integrity. She's not going to take a case that she doesn't think that she is going to win for the right reasons. And she's worth, look up her net worth. She's worth a good few million more than me and Jack combined. Let's put it like that. And maybe even add in the doc too. But if you add in the doc, it's probably getting close. But that being said, but that being said, she's doing this now because it's something that she wants to do. Right? She's getting on. She could retire and live a very good life, but she's staying in and fighting the good fight with integrity. And boy, there's not much more than you can say about a person than that. So I stand with Kathleen.
Can I just quickly add, that's a real excellent comment. And when you think about it, right, she did the Eiler case, a huge complex case involving 21 victims. Most attorneys would have probably retired on that case alone because it was such a huge case. But it goes to show that Kathleen Zellner doesn't rest on her laurels and keeps on going, and you have to admire that.
Absolutely. Appreciate those comments from you, Dr. Silkman and Big Jeff, Jack, and Kel. Big Jeff, you're just going to have to go back and watch and find out which folks he's saying you missed from Stephen Avery this episode, just like everybody else. But
I suppose I took a beating this episode not being here.
But anyway, we appreciate you popping in when you could, Big Jeff. Absolutely. And for Big Jeff, Jack, Dr. Silkman, and Kel, this has been Discussing a Murderer.